Ernest Hemingway is one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. He served in World War I and worked as a journalist before writing the novels and short stories he had become so renowned for. His best-known works are A Farewell to Arms, For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Sun Also Rises, and perhaps his most famous work, The Old Man and the Sea. Hemingway's writing style is very stripped down. He hated excessive use of modifiers. His style was minimalistic, stripped down, tight, and every word he wrote was carefully chosen. Hemingway changed the way American literature was written. Modern fiction wouldn't look like it does today without his influence. If you've read Hemingway, you'll see his storytelling and use of language spread throughout today's fiction across all genres. Hemingway considered it to be bad luck to talk about writing. He said talking about it takes off whatever butterflies have on their wings and the arrangement of hawk's feathers if you show it or talk about it. A lot of writers keep their cards close to their chest when it comes to their craft, but despite this belief, Hemingway said a lot about the craft of writing. So here are 6 tips from Ernest Hemingway on how you can improve your writing. Tip number 1. Start with a true, simple, declarative sentence. I read an article in the New York Times that 81% of Americans want to write a book before they die, and less than 1% of them actually go ahead and do it. There are probably a lot of reasons for this, but I think it has a lot to do with not knowing where to start. It's easy to think about a novel or story. Lines of dialogue, imagery, and scenes can seem so incredible in your head, but then when you sit down to write, nothing happens. Suddenly, all those ideas are flat, and you can't get them down. Hemingway's advice is to start by writing one true, simple, declarative sentence. Sometimes, when I was starting a new story and I could not get it going, I would sit in front of the fire and squeeze the peel of the little oranges into the edge of the flame and watch the sputter of blue that they made. I would stand and look out over the roofs of Paris and think, do not worry, you have always written before and you will write now. All you have to do is write one true sentence. Write the truest sentence that you know. So finally, I would write one true sentence, and then go on from there. It was easy then, because there was always one true sentence that I knew, or had seen, or had heard someone say. If I started to write elaborately, or like someone introducing or presenting something, I found that I could cut that scroll work, or ornament out, and throw it away, and start with the first true simple declarative sentence I had written. If you can whittle your opening down to that one true sentence and get it down on paper, then you can get to sentence number 2, and 3, and 4, and you're off to the races. Tip number 2 is to focus on emotional effect. One of the trickiest things in writing is to take the image or scene out of your head and to put it onto the paper using words, and have all of the emotional reactions translate to the reader exactly the way you want them to. Hemingway's advice is to hone in on details that create emotion, and he gives you advice on how this can be done and how to train your skill on this as a writer. Watch what happens today. If we get into a fish, see exactly what it is that everyone does. If you get a kick out of it while he's jumping, remember back until you see exactly what the action was that gave you the emotion. Whether it was the rising of the line from the water and the way it tightened like a fiddle string until drops started from it, or the way he smashed and threw water when he jumped. Remember what the noises were and what was said. Find what gave you the emotion, what the action was that gave you the excitement. Then write it down, making it clear so the reader will see it too and have the same feeling that you had. That's a 5-finger exercise. Tip number 3 is to write concisely. What Hemingway did to revolutionize American literature was that he stripped all the flowery, unnecessary language out of his novels and put the story first. If he could omit a word, he did, and he avoided unnecessary modifiers. Hemingway started out as a journalist, and it was here where he learned to state the objective facts of events and to write concisely. From page 134 of A Movable Feast, Hemingway said, Ezra was the man who had taught me to distrust adjectives, as I would later learn to distrust certain people and certain situations. An interviewer once asked Hemingway, would you suggest newspaper work for the young writer? How helpful was the training you had with the Kansas City Star? On the Star, you were forced to learn to write a simple declarative sentence. This is useful to anyone. Newspaper work will not harm a young writer, and could help him if he gets out of it in time. So Hemingway learned to write directly, simply, and to convey the story in very tight ways. Here's a good example of this from The Old Man and the Sea. The old man was thin and gaunt, with deep wrinkles in the back of his neck. The brown blotches of the benevolent skin cancer the sun brings from its reflection on the tropic sea were on his cheeks. The blotches ran well down the sides of his face, and his hands had the deep creased scars from handling heavy fish on the cords. But none of these scars were fresh. They were as old as erosions in a fishless desert. Tip number 4 is to build your vocabulary. The more words you have at your command as a writer, the stronger your writing will be. Hemingway said, "Actually, if a writer needs a dictionary, he should not write. He should have read the dictionary at least 3 times from beginning to end, and then have loaned it to someone who needs it. There are only certain words which are valid, and similes, bring me my dictionary, are like defective ammunition, the lowest thing I can think of at this time." So as a writer, you've got to constantly be building up your vocabulary. As an example, saying that they came across some stones that marked a grave isn't the same as saying they came across a kern. But you can't write that if you don't know what kern means. Tip number 5 is to stop writing when it's going well. Writer's block is terrible. One night you are flying. You can't type fast enough to keep up with the story rolling out in your head. Then, the next morning, it's flat and you can't write a single word. To avoid this, you need to stop writing when the writing is going well so you can pick it back up. The best way is always to stop when you are going good and when you know what will happen next. If you do that every day when you are writing a novel, you will never be stuck. That is the most valuable thing I can tell you, so try to remember it. Always stop while you are going good, and don't think about it or worry about it until you start to write the next day. That way your subconscious will work on it all the time. But if you think about it consciously or worry about it, you will kill it, and your brain will be tired before you start. Once you are into the novel, it is as cowardly to worry about whether you can go on the next day as to worry about having to go into inevitable action. You have to go on. So there is no sense to worry. You have to learn that to write a novel. The hard part about a novel is to finish it. Tip number 6 is don't talk about it. In a letter to a Maxwell Perkins in 1939, Hemingway said, "So I'm going to write on that, for whom the bell tolls, until it is finished. I wish I could show it to you so far, because I am very proud of it, but that is bad luck too. So is talking about it." In a letter to F. Scott Fitzgerald in 1927, Hemingway said, "However, I'm now going to write a swell novel. Will not talk about it on account the greater ease of talking about it than writing it, and consequent danger of doing same." Personally, I used to talk about my writing all the time. Some people support you, and some people will scoff or laugh. You get all sorts of reactions, but the truth is you don't need it. They aren't writing the damn book, and they haven't seen your stuff. As much as we all want to think we don't care what people think, we do, especially when it comes to our art. So the advice from Hemingway, which I really urge you to follow, is to not talk about the writing. Just write. Everyone can talk about it after the work is done and published in readable form. Until then, keep it yours and locked up until it's ready for the world. So those are 6 tips from Ernest Hemingway on how you can become a better writer. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.